Now we come to the second section in chapter 14, section 14.2, and we will be studying this whole section as our topic for week 7, which begins on Monday. Let's see, today is, at least here in the United States, it's Friday the 23rd. It's already Saturday the 24th where you are. Beginning on Monday the 26th through the 1st of May, I believe is Saturday. I know that's a holiday, but some of you will be saving your Greek homework to do on a holiday. Please take some time with your families as well. But knowing the penchant for many to cram, I hope that you don't, but sometimes we get behind with our obligations, and I realize that, but please don't make it a habit. Anyway, we're studying section 14.2 in our textbook, which is about third declension neuter nouns. Now, I don't really need to say a whole lot about this section. I will actually leave it to you to read the pages in the textbook about neuter nouns, and also to watch the video by Dr. Campbell on third declension neuter nouns. He will use one example, the word telos, which means goal primarily. The goal of the law, it can mean end, but more often means goal. So Paul says the goal of the law is, and so forth. When we get to study Galatians in Greek 4 and 5, in those semesters, we will see those verses. Telos will be an example that he will use. And we have also some words that end in os, which up until now we are used to being words like logos and so on, which are second declension masculine. But we have to begin to watch out now because we do have particularly neuter, third declension neuter nouns that end in Omicron sigma and are not second declension, but are third declension. And so it becomes all the more important for us to know not only the nominative singular, which up until now, up until this chapter, we have primarily learned, but to learn the genitive singular and of course the gender as well. The gender is not always obvious. Let me share, as you know, let me share my screen, and I'm thankful I'm back where I can use Zoom to record instead of just an offline recording program. I want to look at some vocabulary words in this video segment, and then I'll make a second segment about some more aspects of neuter nouns, and then ask you also to watch Dr. Campbell. Looking at the vocabulary in chapter 14.1 and 14.2, we've already seen the masculine and feminine nouns like I own, ionos, and ha. It's important, again, and I emphasize this, to learn the masculine, feminine, the genitive, the masculine singular, the genitive singular, and then the gender Usually we use the article to show that as an ion, ionos ho. This word can have a very broad range of meanings: age, aeon, or simply forever. Forever sounds more like an adjective, but there is a sense in English in which we use forever as a noun. Forever, he is exalted in heaven. God is exalted, or Jesus is exalted in heaven. I'm not sure if that's a noun or an adjective, but they are very close. In fact, the idiom is ton ionon in the accusative I'll correct that and come back to it. I'm not sure that I just gave the correct idiom, but professors make mistakes, don't they? I just wanted to point out that the Jews conceived of world history as being in two ages: the current age and the age to come, which would be the age of the Messiah. The Messiah would come and reign, put all enemies to an end, and that age would be eternal age. So they had two ages. In the New Testament, we actually have three ages. We have the previous age, and we have the last days, which have brought about a new time, which are usually called the last days. They began with the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. Peter announces the beginning of the last days, which connecting with Old Testament prophecies. Up until John the Baptist, up until the coming of the Holy Spirit and the completion of the work of Christ and his exaltation into heaven and his sitting down at the right hand of God, which is a picture that he has taken his place of authority and rules. There was the previous age, the age of the prophet speaking, but now those days have been fulfilled. And we are in the last days in which Christ reigns invisibly. He is not yet visibly reigning. And that's what I mean by a second age of some theologians call it the now but not yet age. Christ reigns, but we don't yet see him reigning. We have some blessings of the promised Messiah and his coming, but not all of them. We have death overcome, but death still is part of our world. Someday death will be abolished forever, and the last parts of the promised reign of the Messiah will be visible, will come to pass. But right now we are in an age that is, so to speak, in between. And so without thinking of a verse that specifically uses the word ion in that way, as calling it an ion, an age, I need to do some more research and see if there is one. In general, we should think of, in Christian thinking, we should think of this time since Pentecost as the last days, as the reign of Christ invisible on earth until he comes in his second coming in glory. And then the final age, which is truly forever, the age to come, which the New Testament speaks about, the age to come. is finally inaugurated. So what the Jews did not understand, that the Messiah's reign would be first invisible, is taught for us in the New Testament. And the disciples wanted to know when is that age beginning, that the Christ reign is visible. And he said, that's not for you to know the times and seasons, but you will be my witnesses. So right now we are his servants, his slaves in this world, suffering as he suffered, but also with our minds in heaven, as it were, according to Colossians 3:1-4. Your mind is in heaven, even while your bodies are still on earth, and you have to live your life on earth. But we should not be consumed with this earth. Now, let me spend some time on some of the other words that are in our vocabulary list. Aner, andros. I'm going to move something out of the way that's giving me trouble. Aner, andros, ha. As we said before, a man, a male, or a husband. This word is very definitely gender specific. It is not only masculine grammatically, it is masculine in meaning. And it differs in that way from anthropos, which can be a person, a human being in general, man or mankind, and is specifically a man and often a husband. The word gune, which I mistakenly in previous lessons referred to as a first declension noun, is indeed, of course, not a first declension noun. And correct that now. I think I corrected myself before, but again, correction. Gune, gune kos. Gunai kos. Hey. I think I mentioned that we get the word gynecology, and a gynecologist is a doctor who treats women. So this word is third declension as well. And obviously being feminine helps us to remember its meaning. Woman or wife, an adult female person, includes virgins. So it is not only a wife, it can mean a woman in general. We have words like elpis, elpidos, hey, which we had last time in vocabulary 14.1, hope. But the biblical New Testament word hope means does not have the English meaning that we often attach to it. I hope that tomorrow the weather will be nice. In the New Testament, this word is used for confidence. So Christ in you, the hope of glory, the confidence of eternal glory. Christians are confident in their faith. Mater, metros, the word for mother, again, we noticed last time, is third declension, as is nux, nuktos, hey, the word for night. And it was night. The Greek 4 class just recently translated John chapter 13, where Judas went out, and a very short statement, estin nux. It was night. And that, I think, in John, very definitely has a symbolic meaning as Judas goes out, refusing Jesus' last attempt to reach out to him for repentance by giving him the nicest part, as it were, the most important part of the meal, reaching to him this portion of bread, and he decides to betray him then, and he goes out, and it says it was nux. It was night. Grammatically, we noted that the kappa joins with the sigma in the nominative singular to become xi. So we have nux. We have to learn that it's a feminine hey, and that's why, again, I implore you to learn nouns now by their nominative singular, genitive singular, so you know when a noun is third declension. And then, of course, also the gender, because it's not obvious nux that it's feminine. We just have to memorize that. Some words again like aner and pater and patros are third declension, but this is obviously masculine because the father is masculine. Pous, podos, we know that means foot. Sarx, sarkos, hey, means flesh. And the word flesh can have a variety of meanings. It can be a negative meaning, sark, flesh, in the sense of our old human nature, that is apart from Christ, but it can also be used in a literal sense. The flesh in my hands, and this is flesh, and we still live in sarki, dative case, saosi, isaosi, sarki, in a dative case, in the flesh. Paul says we still live in the flesh. We are still in this age, not yet in the age to come. Charis, charitos, one of the wonderful words of the New Testament that means grace, favor, and one very knowledgeable New Testament Greek expert, actually Dr. Mounts, billmounts.com, a website that, of course, I hope you have found useful online for the dictionary, the lexicon, would say that the basic meaning of charis is generosity. Grace is a word that in my country has been used so much that people don't really know what it means. And perhaps generosity, if we think of the generosity of God in giving his son, the grace of God, charis, it might help us to get a little bit of a handle on this word. Cheros, the word for hand, and eirene, we have had eirenes, hey. Notice that even with first declension and second declension nouns, we give the genitive singular now, simply so that we know when we learn a new word that it is which declension it belongs to, and this belongs to the first declension, meaning peace. I've made a note here in the New Testament and in the Septuagint, the abbreviated LXX, which are Roman numerals. If you don't know what LXX stands for, 70, the number 70, because there was a Jewish legend that 70 Jewish scholars translated the Old Testament in 70 days, miraculously, in the 2 centuries before Christ. They probably, that part of the legend is probably not true, that they did it in 70 days down in Egypt. Whether it was just 70 scholars is also open to dispute. But what isn't open to dispute is that they did translate the Hebrew and Aramaic, there's some parts in Aramaic of the Old Testament into Greek in the first 2 centuries before Christ. Some books were done first and then others. And there may have been more than one edition of this Septuagint, just like there are different editions or even versions of translations today. There's the NIV 1984, there's the revised NIV, there's the Revised Standard Version from 1954, and then the new Revised Standard Version that was done 50 years later. And so the Septuagint, they call it the Septuagint, which simply means 70, as the Roman numerals LXX means 70. This translation is so important because it is the one that the apostles evidently used in reaching their world in the first century with the gospel. We know this because they usually quote the Septuagint or adapt the Septuagint in their quotations from the Old Testament in the New Testament. In the New Testament, when they quote the Old Testament. Irene is in that Old Testament the equivalent of shalom, which is much bigger than peace as most people think of it. Most people think of peace as just the absence of war, but peace is much, much stronger than that. Shalom. Harmony is another word that gets close, but probably no one word can translate this huge word shalom. Salam. Both Hebrew and Aramaic are very close languages. The messianic salvation. A is a word, is the word for or than, and you have to watch out that you don't confuse it with the article he, which means the feminine article. A means or and, than. I'm always getting confused with the Urdu word or. It sounds like or in English in my ears. And so when I hear someone say or in Urdu, I think they are saying or this or that, when actually they're saying this and that, or when you use or, spelt, I think AUR in English letters, in Latin letters. I have a note. You notice the accent and the soft breathing that distinguishes this word from the article he. He has no accent, but a, the Greek word for or, does. Kephale, kephales, he. This word is given in vocabulary 14.1, and you need to make a correction. I think I don't have the hard copy of our textbook here, but in my Kindle version, he has the genitive as os with alpha, but the genitive singular of kephale, head, is the word for head is kephales and not kephalas. So please make that correction. Oops, I still have it here. I need to take that out. Meno, I remain, I abide, I stay. Abide in me, John 15, is an old word, abide. We don't use it anymore. So I suggest that you translate either with remain or stay, and don't use the word abide. By the way, the past tense of abide is abode. He abides in, we wouldn't say that today. I don't think in England they say it. He abides somewhere. He abode means past tense. The past tense of abide is not abided, but abode. But again, I would use I remain, the past tense, the aorist tense, emena, would be he remained, or he, she, or it stayed. or actually that would be, of course, imein, imeinin, the ending in. I remained, I stayed, imena. We have this word me, which also means not, but me is usually used in the New Testament for not when the verb with which it goes almost always goes with a verb form is not in the indicative mood. The indicative mood prefers u, and u of course is the first one we learned for not. But when we come now to our next lesson to the infinitive, and especially in the subjunctive in chapter 16, we are no longer in the indicative mood. And there we will find that the word for not is me, and it is not u, or no longer u, or very seldom. Oikia, oikias, he, is obviously a first declension noun, which means house or household. So this can refer to the literal house, but more often to the household, that is the people who live in the house. There's a lot of overlap in meaning between this word and oikos, the word we learned before, the second declension word for house. Ude, and not, but not even, and also this word can have a non-indicative form, me de, me instead of u. Udes, udemia, uden. No one or not one. This is a pronoun, and pronouns come in masculine, feminine, and neuter forms. Because of that, we have the masculine, feminine, and neuter forms of this word. We can also have, and I don't think he has given it, but we can also have medes, medemia, meden, if we're outside of the indicative mode, which again means the same thing. No one, no, not one. Usually no one. Or if it's neuter, it can be nothing. Un is the word for therefore, and like there's a note in your textbook, like the word gar, which means for. Un never comes first in a Greek sentence, but it will often come first in our English translations. Therefore, it refers back to what is before and draws a conclusion. Sometimes not quite so strong, perhaps, and so so is better, or even lighter than. Then, of course, is not drawing a conclusion at all, and but more often than not, the un draws a conclusion of some kind. Therefore, for this reason, draw a conclusion, and the conclusion follows. Hos, as, when, after, while, about. Hos is very common, it's used very often. As is a very common use of it, but when is also, it can have a variety of meanings, and we just have to watch out in the context which one it is. Now, just to take some examples from the New Testament, ha, gar, apethanen, te, hamarti, a, notice the dative case of this noun, apethanen, epha, pax, which means once for all, never again. Epha pax ho de ze to theo. Now, I like to use examples from the New Testament because it tests your translation abilities. What you have not had is this relative pronoun hos, he, ho, because you don't get that until Greek 3 in chapter 18. We might get there in Greek 2, but we usually don't. And especially during virtual learning, we're a little bit slower. So chapter 18, ho, is actually a neuter, and we would say that which. Hos would be he or he who, referring to a masculine person, but ho is actually a neuter, that which. Now we notice gar never comes first in a Greek sentence, but in English translation, we usually put it first. For that which he died for, actually referring to his death, the death that he died, to sin, he died once for all, and never again. Ephapax. Speaking here of Christ. The death he died to sin, he died once for all. Now, of course, Jesus didn't die to sin the way we are supposed to die to sin, because he didn't have any sin. But Paul is talking about the fact he took our sin, and he paid the price once and for all. He died for what he died, to sin he died, te hamartia, to or for sin, he died once for all, and never again. Ha de ze to theo, and what he lives. You'll remember that this verb zao that we had all the way back in chapter 6. In chapter 8. Alpha, omega, contract verbs. This is technically not actually, but it looks like an alpha contract verb. But it is irregular in its contraction. Ze is the third person singular. He lives, present tense. He lives. He is living. What he lives, de very often means now. It's a kind of in the lexicon is often put and or but de is a little different than that. It is stronger than that. Now what he lives to God. And I've just pulled this verse out of context to give us an example of translation. We have in 1 Corinthians 11:23 an example of a third declension noun. Ego gar pare labon apo tu kuriu ho kai pare doka humin hoti ho kurios Jesus inte nukti he paradideto elabin arton. I've translated for you the imperfect, actually, paradideto. He was being delivered up, imperfect, passive. He was being, the action happens to the subject. We will learn this much later in chapter 23 and chapter 24. He was being delivered up. But notice the dative case of the word nux. for night. In te nukti. The third line, hoti ha kurios Jesus, that the Lord Jesus, in the night in which he was being delivered up. In other words, while he was being delivered up. In the night in which he was being delivered up. Hey is the dative case, and it with the, you notice the iota subscript, it's referring, it's a pronoun, the night in which. But I just want you to notice that nukti, the word for night, is in the dative case. Sa ossi es as onsen. Sa sa ossi sorry, I'm trying to get to the dative case, iota, the dative case, nukti. In te nukti. Notice that the dative case, dative singular, if the article does not change, it looks just like it did with the feminine first declension nouns back in chapter 6. Te, in te hamartia, with iota subscript. In the sin, we would have the same article, but here we have the third declension nux. In te nukti, in the night in which he was usually translated betrayed, but that doesn't actually get across the imperfect tense of paradideto. He was in the night in which he was being delivered up. He took elabin, he took bread. That should look familiar to you. And one more verse before we close this segment. Actually, we'll take this, I think, a break here and take this verse as the first part of segment 2 in our lesson for week 7.